Right, welcome to another episode of what is the P10 show, the isolation show. Today, very, very excited. This is a conversation. This is a person that I know that, like I said, we have a lot of kind of connecting points with. So, yeah, it's when you have a lot of similarities and it brings around a discussion and a topic that we're both so passionate about. I always feel it's going to be good. I always feel it's going to be good. So today we've got Louis. Louis is a registered nutritionist like myself. And would you want to say a bit more about kind of your approach? I'll let you kind of verbalize it because we cross a lot of paths, but I think you've definitely got
Yeah,
some interesting points, strings to your bow.
yeah. I think it's like you said, we're both registered nutritionists, so with the AFN. But I think we both have quite similar experiences as well through where we've sort of come to love nutrition. So my background was I was a professional rugby player for a couple of years, and then ended up falling into a degree. Rugby sort of took a backseat, and I eventually stopped playing. And I did a sports science degree at Loughborough, and then I went to Leeds to do my masters in nutrition. And then I spent a year at Matt Nutrition working with Martin McDonald and Sarah Duffield as a tutor at Matt Nutrition. And now for about 8 months, I've been working with Amelia Thompson, PhD, as part of Team Amelia.
It's, well, sounds like there's two things. A, obviously you've worked alongside some amazing people in the form of Martin, Sarah, Amelia. And then as well as that, your life sounds like you were just describing my life, like in the sense of played professional rugby, went to university, failed, and then have been on, you yourself have been on a kind of a weight loss journey as well. And within that, how do you think that's kind of impacted your coaching and to where the service that you deliver now?
So I think initially I went into nutrition probably because I was just interested in it. As a rugby player, I don't feel that I was interested in sports science initially just because I was interested in training and sort of sports in general, and it was something to go alongside when I was playing rugby at Loughborough. And then when I went to nutrition, I got a real passion for sort of helping people. I seemed to flourish a lot more in nutrition when we were doing sports science modules and things. So when I went to Leeds, it was more of a practitioner's version of nutrition. So I think a lot of people go into sports nutrition from sports science, but I really enjoyed that public contact, and I'd always struggled with my weight growing up. Even when I was a rugby player, struggled with my diet massively. I had some terrible nutritionists who Martin has publicly slated as well. And when I told him about that, he was like, "Oh, wow, you've done well to survive that." And I was like, "Yeah, pretty horrific." And then as I worked up in Leeds, I had, in the latter part of my degree, my undergrad, I got up to 20 stone in weight. I had a really bad relationship with food. I was training quite heavily, but not particularly worried about my diet, just literally putting the calories away to get as big and strong as possible. And then as I started to learn more about nutrition, I sort of went on about a 3-year journey where I eventually went down from 125 kilos to about 97-ish kilos. And through that journey, even though weight loss was a key part, there's lots of facets that we need to consider. And my main area of focus during my masters was behavioural weight management programs. So looking at Slimming World, Weight Watchers, Rosemary Conley versus NHS interventions, and looking at the long-term sustainability of them. So if we can find or take bits of all of them to get the best outcomes possible for people. So I did that for my masters, ended up working at Martin, and I probably wasn't in the best place when I started working at Matt Nutrition. But after that, spent a lot of time with Martin, having some really interesting discussions with him and Sarah especially, and Charlotte from Charlotte Fisher.
Yeah.
That those three people, alongside being exposed to Amelia through Charlotte and through Matt Nutrition as well, all had a big impact on the way that I look at it as a more holistic aspect now, where probably I realised and that I'm not anti-diet, but weight management's become a very small part of a larger thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's this kind of anti-diet culture in particular is such an interesting topic at the moment. The just go, and I suppose this will kind of lead us into large parts of what we want to talk about. But obviously, I mean, I do the same, having basically lost a similar amount of weight to you. I mean, I kind of put my hand up and just say, we actually had this discussion last week, or on Monday actually, in another podcast, that like I'm someone who'd be like, my success stems from 30 kilos worth of weight loss, but then obviously within my own kind of content and coaching, we preach about how, like you say, we don't define our success and by the number that's on the scales. In your own kind of personal journey, what are the kind of the metrics that you would kind of define your success by?
I think initially it was because what triggered the majority of my weight loss was the breakdown of a relationship. And what actually came from that was me focusing more on myself, but also being quite open and honest about feelings and emotions, which probably led to me working with the media in the long term. But the metrics I would have used initially would just been weight and sort of output metrics and input metrics of calorie intakes versus energy output. And then also for now, what I tend to use my clients and myself is a lot more holistic in that sense, which is a very sort of broad term, but feelings, emotions, relationships, health, other health markers that aren't the main considering point. And if what I've spoken about before is if we can lead a healthy lifestyle whilst achieving what we want to as well, so leading the lifestyle we want to lead while encouraging healthy behaviors, then weight should fall to a place where we are happiest.
Yeah. How then do we know when we're at that point that we are happy then?
I think at that point, weight isn't an issue and you aren't focused on dictating it, and it's probably not governing, like you said, about value and happiness and impacting on your social well-being. So if we get to a good place, our lifestyle is probably flexible enough, we are achieving what we want to. And one thing that I tend to do a lot with my clients is set other goals if they are looking to lose weight. So let's have a look at their lifestyle goals. So what do you want your lifestyle to look like? Have you got any spiritual goals as well? Do you want to become more sort of mindful in the way you approach things? Do you have any relationship goals? Do you want to be closer to your partner and things like that? And if we can get one, they trigger whys quite a lot. So why people are trying to lose weight, because weight is usually a middle ground behind where actually I want to be more confident. I want to feel more energetic. I want to get better at my sport. But actually, if we can trigger those whys and use lots of multiple measures of success, I'd call it. So instead of having that one metric, like a lot of weight management programs do, where every week you step on the scale at this time, I'm going to use that to measure how good you've been for last week. Instead, let's have a look at, so how do you sleep? How are you feeling when you move? How are you feeling day to day? Are you having a better relationship with your children? What's your mood like at the moment? How are you dealing with the emotional stress we're under at the moment? So a lot of people have come into this and they've done check-ins and said, I'm really struggling. And I'm like, that's okay. If you weren't struggling, I'd probably be worried, because everyone's in this massive storm of anxiety. People are losing jobs. People are losing lives. Let's not forget that in the grand scheme of things. Like, people are going to lose loved ones, and that's really, really sad. And family members aren't going to make it through this, which is awful. So you've got a right to go, I haven't been in a calorie deficit this week. That's the least of my worries. Are you okay? That is the main thing. I want to know that you're okay, and the best way that I can support you through this. And you usually find that if people are ticking all the other boxes, which is I'm sleeping well, I'm feeling better, I'm looking after myself. Self-care at the moment is massive. Asking people to do things to get the best version of themselves is huge at the moment. So Usually that would mean like taking yourself out for a coffee or getting your hair done and things like that. I do with my clients. But at the moment, it's like, if you've got time, just take an hour away from the kids. Let your partner look after the children for an hour, and you take some time to yourself and focus on getting the best version of you possible. And in that way, you can serve other people better as well, because usually they're just taking the emotional stress of everyone else on top of them.
Yeah, I mean, you've brought out some fantastic things, and some, what I will say is really, really difficult things, in the sense of there's two particular things that I'm really interested to ask you about. One is obviously the process of, particularly for the people that are listening to this, what is the process that that you use with your clients to determine their why, or the whys behind what they're trying to do? Because again, you can kind of engage in a process like that superficially, and it doesn't always serve you in the best possible way, if and trying to promote a greater level of self-awareness in and around, okay, why do I feel so strongly about this, or why achieving this, and when you could actually find your true why, it's such a powerful thing. And it's just a game changer. So I'd be really interested, just for my own kind of interest as well, like what's the process that you go with, onboarding and all that kind of stuff?
So once we start with someone, we usually ask them what their goals are, and the people that we tend to work with are quite emotional, and that's the sort of support that we offer them. So usually we get either end of the spectrum. We get people who give you nothing, or people who give you everything all at once. And we're trying to get people to get to that place where they're giving us the comfortable amount that they're comfortable to give us, and that's perfectly fine. The biggest success that I found with people initially, you usually get an idea, and they might give away a few hints and tips on first check-ins that certain words or certain things might have triggered emotional eating episodes and things like that. Mainly the reason that they come to us is to improve their relationship with food and themselves. So a lot of it is to do with self-compassion and self-worth. So some of the initial stuff that we'll set them, instead of getting them dieting straight away, because I think that puts your relationship with food at a lot of stress. A lot of people, if it is in such a vulnerable situation, we will try and convince them that we're going to try maintenance and get you in a better place to diet from. And I think that's a really good initial place to start with. And then from that, I'd set them tasks. So ones that would work for me, habits and behaviors of 3 self-love activities per week, whatever you define those as, what makes you give the best version of you, because you are worth caring about, and you need to treat yourself like you are someone who is worthy of care, and therefore delivering that care as well. So being self-compassionate actually works on 2 levels. So not only are you comforting yourself and making yourself feel loved, but you're actually giving love as well. So you're playing the caregiver as well as the care receiver. So it works on 2 folds. Another thing that works with our clients as well, particularly, is taking mindfulness moments throughout the day. So potentially getting them to address what feelings they are feeling at the time. And a lot of people, and you usually find this in men, usually aren't very good with feelings and emotions, tend to not be able to recognize or struggle to figure out what they're feeling or what emotion they're experiencing at that time. And developing that feeling and emotion, or being able to identify them, is actually really beneficial in reducing emotional eating. What is it? Alzheimer's, I think it's called, the inability to differentiate between feelings and emotions, and actually that can get interspersed with not being able to differentiate between whether you're hungry or craving as well. So people who have had extreme versions of this can't tell whether they are feeling anxious, and instead they think, oh, I'm hungry, and they'll reach for food and therefore try and numb their emotions. And the last thing I tend to get people to do is, there's 3 versions of writing stuff down with me. There'll be journaling, so getting people to write down how their day's gone. Alongside that, usually I'll get people to try and do one thing that they're grateful for each day. So practicing gratitude is really important. It's a very good metric to test how bought in people are to this process as well. Because people who tend to come to us for dieting, they will track all their calories, track all their steps, track all their programs, and then they don't do gratitude at all. And they're like, I haven't got time. It's like, well, if you haven't got time for gratitude, and you've got time for tracking, then there's something wrong here. Yeah. So let's have a look at getting this gratitude implemented there, and why aren't you buying into the process? Then I'd get people to potentially write down the thoughts and feelings that they have sometimes when they're angry, upset at themselves, or guilty or ashamed, and potentially writing a letter of how they would talk to a good friend who is in that situation. I think that's a really good tactic to use, because you're far more critical of yourself than you would be of anyone else that you know, especially someone that you care about. Sometimes we're more critical of ourselves than people that we actually don't like, which is really, really horrible to say, but that's the truth. And then also to improve that self-love, I tend to, if you can imagine you and your body, and you're writing a letter to your body and talking about all the tough times you've had together, but also making peace at that letter. So talking about all the times that you've been together and all the things you've experienced. So if you think about the highs and lows that you've been through in life, your body has stood by you, and therefore you and your body need to make peace instead of battling against each other trying to get a result. Let's work together and then achieve the same goal that way. So a few things that people can try that are really, really useful with clients.
Yeah, I think you've definitely, sport up some fantastic things, and it's some of the things that we've said, in the sense of, like, you can't have the body that you want by hating the body that you have, and there absolutely has to be this. And it's a really, really difficult thing, because one of the things that we've spoken about before, this kind of notion of ambition to improve and to become the best version of yourself, and kind of this idea of self-acceptance and finding peace, they're often two things that kind of contradict one another in many ways, in the sense of we kind of are driven, but yet, like I say, we can't really proceed until we have that kind of idea of self-acceptance. And you said, and you brought up like such a fantastic point, in the sense of you almost have to earn the right to diet. And there has to be that foundation. How is that often met? Do you get much resistance to that? Are you able, or is it often communicated in a way that's like taken on board, that resonates?
It's very individual. I find a lot of people that we work with have some experience of like psychological workings, or they might work in psychological fields, and a lot of the time they beat themselves up because they can't help themselves. And there's nothing wrong with coaches having coaches, and I think a lot of the time it can be really beneficial to actually outsource that responsibility and just use a soundboard. So there's people I've worked with who are PhD psychologists, and they come to me and they might say, I used to suffer with binge eating disorder. So we can't work with them because obviously it's outside our scope, but she's recovered now, so that's fine. Yeah. However, she wants to improve her relationship with food and relationship with herself. I was like, amazing. However, then she might say, I'm doing intermittent fasting at the moment. And for me, I was like, well, we can have discussion points, and some people are very, because they're quite analytical and they're probably more data driven, we can sort of display research around people potential, or like explaining analytical terms of how a intermittent fast could actually mimic a binge restrict disorder with people, that they just backlog their calories and actually give themselves free reign to binge on whatever they want, and actually it's within their calories because they've been starving all day. And it can trigger it as well, because you get to that point of hunger that you'll eat any amount of calories that are available to you. So you come home and you're almost justifying it to yourself then. So it can mask that sort of disordered eating. With regards to a lot of people, we finding maintenance, and usually we find if they are having overeating or binge eating or emotional eating episodes, then we can put them at slightly higher calories anyway, because usually if they are overeating or binging, that's overriding everything. They're usually putting away a couple of thousand calories in those sessions, maybe once or twice a week. So if we can actually bring them down to maintenance, they'll start to lose weight, and they'll think, oh my God, even though it's not true maintenance, even though it's calculated maintenance, the amount that they're reporting, we can bring it down because they're in a gaining cycle technically at the moment. So if we can bring it down to a point where we go, well, this will be weight maintenance, then we can actually stop the weight gain. Potentially they'll underreport, they'll feel better because they're not, and we have all these other exercises going alongside it as well. So we've got the self-care regimes, we've got the self-compassion stuff as well. All those sort of stack on top of each other, and we start to get a bit of momentum towards weight loss. But usually it's a difficult decision, and it's not a straight no. And I make it clear from the get-go that this is very collaborative. that it's, I've got ideas, you know yourself better than anyone, let's work together and find the best results for you, and I want to get you in the best place possible for you to move forward.
Yeah, if there's not that initial buy-in, I can completely relate to that. And I mean, I've had situations before where, like, even just I put someone on someone like the ketogenic diet because I can just see that they're really, really bought into it. And whilst that might not be my most chosen and most optimal kind of way to move forward, I mean, if that's their preferred method, then it's my job to then kind of communicate them out of that, or along a path that might obviously collaboratively decide that is going to best move them forward. Now, the notion of confronting of emotions and sitting with emotions and things like that, one of the most kind of difficult things to do. I'm interested because obviously a large part of, like I say, that some of this, there's a lot of kind of commonalities here. Sometimes the issue that I have, and I'm just interested to hear your experiences, is that obviously people do come in from a point of view of kind of the nutrition is going to help change body composition and thus improve performance and potentially other areas of their life. But when there comes around this discussion of kind of emotions and all the rest of it, they can almost be, like you say, particularly guys, can really struggle to articulate that, or they can just just that. And there's a lot of resistance in terms of having to be with that. I mean, I can even just now, the notion of many people being in isolation on their own, and obviously even that's quite damaging for some people. Do you have methods? Obviously, you've spoken about kind of just of a lot of the journaling and gratitude and stuff like that. But then, how do you then unpick that to better for someone to then better increase their self-awareness and be able to just sit with their emotions in a much more effective way?
From a coaching point of view, it would probably be always be curious. So getting people to define the words that they're using or how they're feeling. If they have a statement, go, oh, that's really interesting. What do you mean by that? Getting and developing that sort of trust and collaboration. Defined as that trust is built. So if you can build that early on by being as caring and non-judgmental as possible, and just being curious around the wording that they use and offering that support through it, whilst also giving them tasks to help them explore that a little bit more. Usually we haven't got a huge amount of pushback on that just because we're quite open. That's the sort of way that we coach. So people are usually drawn to that aspect of, so I've had guys come to me and they've, on the front, would probably say that they're quite a manly man, they love their football and everything like that, but they come to me and say, I haven't got a good relationship with food. Let's try and figure this out. And even a man saying that is quite rare. A lot of men won't talk about their relationship with food because that involves feelings and emotions. And so this links back to, during my master's, I had a lecture by a guy called Simon Rowlands, who we looked into the gender differences between weight management. And he wrote a chapter in behavioral, or it might be lifestyle medicine. It's one of the main books. He wrote a chapter or co-authored a chapter, and he's also published some literature on why men don't go to Weight Watchers, which I found fascinating, even that thought, and looking at the social dynamics of those areas of how men. So Simon, I was on Instagram the other day, and Simon, who I know, asked the question, and it was, how would you approach mindfulness from a masculine point of view? Or for a guys are usually quite standoffish about that. Mindfulness sounds quite feminine. So if we can just call it awareness, because that's all it is, it's developing awareness. And an interesting way to look at it is, if you think about training that mind-muscle connection, that's a form of mindfulness. Being aware of muscular contractions when you're training and your efficiency, and when you're pushing, if you're doing a clean, that sort of squeezing your glutes through and making sure you're lifting really high, having that kinesthetic awareness is actually a form of mindfulness when you move. So if we can find other avenues to approach it through. I think that's really useful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's amazing. And then for anyone that's kind of listening, I think what it's doing really, really well is just, it's what you're talking through is just a much more definitive process. When I've said things, like I said, for those that listened to the last one, I was saying you've got to unpack these moments. If you have like maybe lapsed in behaviors or struggled or like had any kind of difficulties in around your eating behaviors, like that's an opportunity to unpack it. And this is the process that you go through, and understanding, well, what was the also like what were the environmental factors that kind of, that maybe how was your sleep. And so this idea of journaling and noting thoughts and feelings, and then particularly noting the kind of the dialogue that's also happening in between your ears, like how positive is it? And
Yeah,
then
it's amazing. Like I said, I didn't think about it until last week, really, that once you start practicing mindfulness in one aspect, it will affect so many other areas of your life that you won't realize how much you've actually just through stuff and didn't question anything. And even taking a step back, it's Paul Gilbert who wrote The Compassionate Mind, talks about self-compassion. He's one of the main researchers on it. And he said, even in, because that loop back and forth of, you're stupid, why did you do that? Oh, I don't know why I did it. Oh, you're so stupid, you don't even know why you did it. And that backward loop in your head, even just stepping outside that, acknowledging that's happening, is the first step. And then being able to break it down and go, so where are these thoughts and feelings coming from? What's driving them? And if you can have this approach to a lot of things, it can drastically improve the way that you manage your stress, manage your emotions, manage your calorie intake, when it's, and you realize that you start to question your drivers behind things massively, and you can almost unpick and look back and go, so where does that behavior actually come from? And what is, another thing that we talk about is, what is the intent? So when people are going for food and potentially emotionally eating or craving and things like that, picking it out and just asking yourself, what is my intent? Instead of just going through the motions, if you're there and you're having a go at yourself, to go, what is the intent of this conversation, this internal dialogue? What am I trying to achieve here? Am I trying to make myself feel bad? Is that productive to what I'm trying to achieve in the long term? Probably not. What can I learn from this situation? How's that? That's probably a better approach to have. Oh, that's amazing. Right, we've moved past that. Let's move forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's like we cannot comprehend the negative, and so if we even just getting in this battle in and around food, so saying I can't, not well, I can't eat that, I shouldn't eat that, and all these kind of phrases are really, really damaging, because it's like, if I say don't press the button, you're also already more inclined to press the button. And so reframing the way these small little tweaks to our language makes a huge difference, in the moment of making the decision. And like I say, some of the things that like we ask similar questions in the moment, in the sense of like, is what, like I said, what's the intent of this food decision, and engaging in this process. What is, so does this food decision nourish me from a health point of view, or does it nourish me from a soul? Does it nourish my soul in that sense? And if it's nourishing your soul, then yeah, it's good. Like, food is there to enhance your social experience, and improve, like I say, improve the kind of lifestyle behind that. And so becoming at peace with that to begin with, and then it's never going to, I mean, particularly in a climate like we're in, it's high emotions undulating anyway. We just accept that. And what you're talking about is just such a fantastic framework to then unpick it in the moment. Unpick it in the moment of this kind of emotional kind of emotional feelings. So yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. What is the notion then? Okay, so how much with your clients do you monitor scale weight? I'll ask that to start with.
Very individual. A lot of people, we might measure once a week, but we look at trends over long term. Depends on what emotions that scale weight can trigger and what the goal is long term. Some people, it might be it triggers some really negative emotions, and I've noticed usually people who it's like it's compounded. So people who have got a bad relationship with food have a potentially bad relationship with exercise, have a bad relationship with themselves as well. And that triad there works backwards and forwards all the time. And the answer lies somewhere in there and something that I can control. And usually, if I want to control my weight, it's like at the moment, people feel a lack of control. So what's the one thing they can control? Well, my calories. I can control my calories. And I'm going to hold on to that and drag my weight down because that's a form of control. We need to move away from that in a way and almost have qualitative experiences and how we can measure success in other ways. So how's your week been? Instead of giving me a scale of 1 to 10, talk me through it. Let's discuss it and let's see what the words you use and how, and even if you can get them on the phone or even on a FaceTime, it's brilliant because you can notice tone then as well, so people can pick up on, oh, so I had a good day Monday and like Tuesday was okay, and oh, so what happened Tuesday? So let's explore that a little bit better. And it might be nothing big happened, but they're beating themselves up about something that isn't a potentially big thing, and it's that reassurance of, okay, why are you beating yourself up about that? Well, because I was bad. Well, you weren't bad. You had a good time. You enjoyed yourself. That's social. That nourishing your soul. That's so important. So I find that people start a journey with us, their goals will change massively because they might come to us thinking that the scale's going to solve my problems. Any sort of negative feelings I have towards myself and my food, and I want to just fix my relationship with food. That's it. If I can just fix my relationship with food, I'm sorted. Okay, lots of things that we've got to address here. So if we address the relationship themselves, the relationship with food, the relationship with exercise, so it might be, again, that sort of exercise addiction or using it as a punishment, that they exercise from a place of, I need to change my body to be happy. How about we can accept you for more than the value on the scale and accept you for more than the skills and your work ethic and everything like that, how you are as a person. Let's have a look at that, because the scale weight's not going to change that. So let's actually see what you are as a person and what other people see. So a good task I get people to do is to write down 2 or 3 people that they're really good friends with, that they value the most in their life. It might be family members, and what are the traits that you value in them. And I guarantee their weight isn't on there.
That's amazing. I'm stealing that.
Yeah, steal it, borrow it, whatever. It's an amazing task, and I love it because you just see people go, yeah, so why do I place so much value on what I bring to the table based on my weight? Your friends don't care how much you weigh. They care if you're a good person. And you usually find that people who you are friends with have the same values, and that's why you're friends. So that's a really important thing to remember as well, is that values that you see in them, they probably see in you as well. So you're actually just looking in the mirror.
Yeah, no, that's, well, I mean, what a powerful exercise that is. In terms of, is that again a very much a kind of explorative process that you go through as through the coaching process, in terms of, do you look to define people's values, or is that part of the process, or is these just kind of, it's more fluid in that sense?
More fluid. It's always even when people come to us and we sort of send them a services package, that's not even set in stone. That people come to us just like, well, I want this aspect, I want this. Well, we'll make it for you because that's what you need and that's what you probably want the most, and let's make you the best version of you through what you want. So it's all very fluid, and it's however much support they need or want at that time, totally happy to give them. It's values, we don't necessarily get them to define it because it's quite a hard thing to do. And that, again, that can change from time to time as well. And it can be potentially a bit emotional, because if people's values their lifestyle's not currently matching with their values, then that can ask some big questions on what their lifestyle's looking like at the moment. And that can mean some big changes. And like, it can be emotionally quite a daunting and challenging session. But looking at the values along with goals and lifestyle, and just asking the questions like, so what do you value most? And people might think that their values are different to what they are. what their behaviors might be suggesting something different. So if they say, well, obviously I value my family, it's like, so how often do you speak to your family? How often do you see them? Well, I'm training at the moment 7 days a week in the gym. Well, that's another thing we're going to change, because one, you're not going to get the benefits from training 7 days a week, realistically. You're not allowing that time to rest, recover, and adapt. What other things do you value? Well, I like seeing my friends. How often do you see them? Not very often. Oh, so what did you do last time I went out with them? So I went out for food and went to Pizza Express, but I had a salad. And it's all these little things that you pick apart throughout, and it's not a judgmental, it's right. Why did you do that? Let's explore that together, and let's just be curious at why we're making these decisions from a non-judgmental point of view, because we're not here to tell you you're good or bad. We're here to just get you the best version possible.
Yeah, no, completely. There's two questions that have just come in, and I think I'll ignore your first one, but I think this is a really valid point at this point. I understand that maybe your friends may not put emphasis on your weight, but how do you escape from you putting value on the weight that you view as a way to measure your fitness? And then he's asked, how long does it actually take? And obviously that's going to be very individual. But yeah, in terms of escaping that notion of putting value on the scales, I mean, it kind of brings up some kind of different approaches from a point of view of, do you actually use this kind of controlled coaching process to educate around the scales, to educate the variables that impact scale weight, so you can become at peace with it? Or do you go cold turkey and say, that's not serving you right now, so let's not use it? How would you kind of approach it from that sense?
I usually try and put my content on my Instagram to like answer the questions that clients are potentially going to be struggling with that week, and then just go, oh, I've written an interesting post on this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And that sort of triggers, even just instead of having to discuss it directly with me, it's look at this image, and they don't have to talk to me about the image if they don't want to. They can just sit with it and then potentially bring it for a later time if they want. So I find that quite useful, especially with the scale. So on that question, putting value on weight, if that is something that you view as a way to measure your fitness. And so actually asking what the scale weight is, and it is to measure your relationship with gravity, and that's it. That's all it is. And measure your fitness in other ways. So I worked with a CrossFitter for a while, and she really struggled with wanting to get to a certain weight, and was like, this is my competition weight. I was like, okay, it's not a weight category sport, so that's interesting. Let's discuss this. Well, I was happiest there. A lot of people tend to put their physique on a pedestal of, just because it looks good, it's really, really good to look at. A lot of people do in bodybuilding and bikini athletes and stuff, that actually, they forget how they felt that day, how much they'd sacrificed to get to that point, how much socially they'd sacrificed, how much time with family and friends, sort of Christmas and things like that with people. It's like, oh, I didn't really have any Christmas food this year. I didn't really socialize with my family because I was dieting. So looking at when I was working with this CrossFit athlete, she had a goal, I think it was 57 kilos. And we were a couple of kilos off that. And I said, right, so we'll move towards that because you want to prove your power to weight ratio, and it will help with obviously endurance and stuff. But what happens if we don't get there? Do we fail? If we get to 57 or 67, whichever one it was, I can't remember. If we get to 68 kilos, have we failed? Does that mean you're not going to perform on the day? Potentially having more fuel on the day will improve you. If you haven't competed at that weight, how do you know? If you haven't performed at that weight, how do you know? What are the stories? Jake Linarden from the Instagram page Break Binge Eating is really, really good, and he put up a post, I think it was yesterday, about the stories we tell ourselves based on our weight. And I'd advise everyone to go and have a look at it. It was stuff like, my friends won't value much if I put on weight. My job will value my performance if I'm at a lower weight. all these stories that people tell themselves, and you might be telling yourself that if I'm not 57 kilos, that means I won't perform on the day. How do you know? Are you catastrophizing? That's another thing. It's that dichotomous thinking of I need to be this or it's nothing. How about we move towards that? Because you might feel better. You might sleep better the night before at a higher weight, having all your glycogen stores replenished. You might feel better because you're able to have more food to perform. Actually, having more fat around your joints might actually reduce the impact of some of the high stuff that you're doing. I know lots of rugby players who have played with 6 and 8 packs, and it's anecdotal, but they're constantly injured. However, some of the lads who carry more body fat are actually reducing the impact on your actual bones and muscles due to the extra padding. It's just physiology. But there's lots of other things to consider, and I'd say we know, if you look at, say, I use CrossFit because I like watching documentaries on CrossFit, and I think Matt Fraser is the man.
Yes.
But his physique isn't amazing.
No.
He could lose body fat, let's be honest. And if we were looking at that as a S&C or nutritionist, you might trial that. But he's still performing on the day, so it doesn't matter. He's still the best in the world. He's still performing ridiculously. And you can compare him to a Fikowski, who is not in really good shape. Or is it Noah Olsen, is it?
Yeah, Olsen, yeah.
They're in ridiculous shape. And Zach George from the UK, they're all in seriously jacked shape. But Matt Fraser is performing better with more body fat. It's mainly because of lots of different reasons. He might just be a better athlete. He might perform at a lower body fat and be better, but he might perform at a slightly higher body fat and be better. We don't know.
It's certainly from hormonally everything. We forget that body's fat is a necessary part of our function. Yeah. Obviously, we want to mitigate that, manage it, and all the rest of it. But I think that, like I say, it has so much kind of negative association. Well, let's just kind of also realize that it's there to serve a purpose as well.
Yeah. And there's one thing that I know from friends who compete in bodybuilding is just from the guys, 6 months before a show, they can't get it up. Yep. What kind of stress and strain do you think that's going to put on your relationship with your potential partner at the time? How do you think you're going to feel if your testosterone's that low and you've got that low libido? Do you think you're going to feel good at that amount? That's the sort of questions that we should be asking instead of going. And I know that you said wait and look good. Look good for who? For you or for someone else? Is it comments from the outside or is it comments from the inside? And both those conversations might need to be addressed. If you are having that negative talk with yourself and comparing yourself to a previous physique, then potentially that's where we look at self-compassion. If you're getting comments from other people, then potentially you need to address your friendship circle, because friends shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. They should be looking to support you. And I think another thing, to go a bit off topic, in the pandemic at the moment, we're seeing lots of people grouped together in some of the kindest actions that we've ever seen, and it's amazing. We're also seeing some people just looking after number one and not giving a crap about anyone else. And it's addressing that sort of what do you want to be? Do you want to be the person who is kind, who has good values in their life, who looks after other people, who cares about how they talk to themselves? Or potentially are you going to sacrifice that to potentially get leaner for someone else? Because I did a post about it a couple of months ago, and it was, what happens when the compliments stop? So if you're chasing that lean physique and getting that 6-pack, yeah, you'll get compliments initially, but that becomes the new norm. And you usually find after a while, especially someone who's had dramatic weight loss, if they've done it for external reasons and not from a good place within of, I'm doing this for me and my health and what I want to achieve, then they struggle to maintain that, because it's not, that external validation will disappear very quickly.
Yeah, it's fair, and it's almost like the particularly working in sport and weightlifting, it's almost like a Commonwealth Games moment where they have their moment on their podium and they work for years for this, and then it's just gone. And it's a very kind of similar process. I think that's a fantastic point to raise in what happens when the compliments stop.
I knew a Slimmer of the Year. So she won, it might have been Slim World or Weight Watchers, one of those, but she was on the magazine for the Person of the Year who lost the most amount of weight and had a photo shoot and everything. And she done really well. But then after that, she struggled massively. Once she got that award, she really had a bad relationship with food, put on some weight, and that's not negative. And I think we do need to stop judging weight gain as a negative at times, because it's a natural part of life, as well as losing weight is, because priorities are different. If someone's worried about putting on weight at this time, I think you need to check yourself, because there's lots of other things to worry about at the moment. And she really struggled, and then she went to whichever one she started out. I don't know whether, I think it might have been Weight Watchers. Then she went to Slimming World, and that as well, that's where we have a look at like identity-based behaviors. So if you're known as the lean person and you're not lean anymore, that's part of you disappearing. And I think placing so much value on your physique and the way you look, if you disassociate your value away from that, then therefore it doesn't really matter to yourself or anyone else what your body shape is, because you're just worried about what it's capable of or what it does for you and how you feel. But if you feel that is part of your identity, that's probably why you're so keen to hold on to it, is because once it goes, then you're losing part of your identity, which is really hard to deal with.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to a lot of what we're talking about earlier in terms of the whys and things like that. And nutrition is basically there to drive your why forward, and using it as a tool in that sense, and then it just further validates the reason to kind of engage in that. And then I think it's really important to also say that, and I believe that we kind of stand similar, that I'm not anti-diet. Like, if you want to diet, go, like, please, like, let's do it. However, we have to operate in under certain parameters that are going to, like, to be honest, like, even just make this the last time that you probably have to quote diet. And particularly if you do it that way, in this way, you are so much less likely to relapse.
Yeah, and if you can reduce the value you put on it and look at it as that I'm not dieting, I'm just pursuing healthy behaviors and seeing where it lies in the end. I think that's a really good way to look at it. That if you are worried about performance, then your performance and your nutrition support your performance will dictate the body weight that you come at, or your body fat levels. That I know as a rugby player, that I was told to put on weight, but my performance levels it was high cardiovascular work. So we were at the high end of the fitness level as front rowers, and we were going on to the second lot of the yo-yo test with the back rowers. And that was our goal, is to be the fittest out there. Was that a good weight for me to play at? Probably not, because I was probably too light. I'm not anti-diet in any way. I think as long as dieting is done from a good place and you don't place it on a pedestal as well, that it's going to solve all your issues, that potentially if you are looking that I can lose weight to improve performance, then you could probably get more sleep or better sleep to improve performance as well. But you're not addressing that. Instead, you are going for something. So actually, why are we going after weight loss? Is it an image thing? If it is, that's fine. But look at it and admit it to yourself that actually, I just started training potentially for a marathon, not even a date, like a proper marathon, just to run a marathon in 4 months' time while we're in lockdown, because it's a new challenge for me. And for me, I'm going, right, I'm not a good distance runner at all. I ran the furthest I've ever ran last week, which was like 12K.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. It was actually really enjoyable as well. I've switched now, and everyone's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm actually enjoying running. I'm a bit worried. But for me, that's a challenge. But then I'm also like, well, I need to recover from my runs, and I could lose some body fat. My weight's creeped up since I did my back before Christmas. So I'm just like, actually, it'll be a good opportunity for me to lose weight because it improve my performance as well. But I'm quite happy sitting here at the moment. And like, as a nutritionist, I'm usually quite upfront and honest that I don't walk around with a six pack. I don't walk around ripped or anything like that, because that's not part of my job description, or that doesn't make me a good nutritionist. That's not how I want to live my life either. I want to be able to have days where I eat what I want more, and then what I feel I need on other days. But yeah, the whole weight and body image, again, be curious. Why do I feel the need to do this? What what's driving this behavior? What's driving these urges that I feel like I need to lose weight or get leaner? And be curious about that. I'm not saying that it's wrong to lose weight. I'm far from saying it, because we know there's lots of health benefits from being at a lower body fat level, especially in the healthy BMI range. But some of that is health behaviors as well. So if you are pursuing healthy behaviors, and this is what the Health at Every Size movement is for, the HAZE movement, which is very sort of tribal, political, and I don't agree with a lot of it, but a lot of it is about not dieting and just chasing healthy behaviors. However, sometimes weight loss will happen as a result of that. So if you just concentrate on the things that are actually going to get you, I think Great British Rowing call it, the question is this going to make the boat go faster in all their processes? Is this email I'm going to send going to improve the team's result at the weekend? Is it going to make the boat go faster? So all these things. Is weight management going to make the boat go faster? Potentially, but you could be under recovered going into that if you're dieting, and therefore you might not make the competition. Do you want to do that? Lots of questions. It's very tricky. And again, this is why working with a coach, I think you really need to have that open and collaborative relationship of how are you feeling, and being able to be quite honest and going, I'm not being funny, but these low calories are kicking my ass. Can we up them? I'm not that bothered about being at that weight for that competition. I'd rather compete in a slightly higher weight category. Oh, there's no weight categories. Oh, it doesn't matter what body weight I compete at. Let's just make me feel like I'm best and getting the most bang for my buck out my training leading up to it. This is what you find with fighters as well. Boxers, they tend to diet so hard that it actually trumps or like plummets their training. So they go into a fight and the performance is through the floor because they've dieted too hard into it. When actually, if you can compete at a weight that is comfortable for you, then your performance is going to be better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to add to that, I think like what we have to remind ourselves is that you do not win the game of body composition. Like the game of health is an infinite game. And so it's you just acknowledge it, that sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. And just having this kind of more rational view about it, just, okay, I have got this on, I've got this on at work, I've got this on this on with competition or whatever, and I'm getting my arse handed to me. And I am maybe a bit behind at the moment. Maybe during this time you are a bit behind, and that's okay. And then it's just trying to kind of view it as ahead and behind rather than winning and losing. I'm very interested as well, because a large base of kind of community of people that will listen to this and a huge base of my clients in particular are based in London. And within London, there is this huge kind of, obviously, corporate culture being one, which is obviously high pressure. And then also within these kind of corporate cultures, there are huge social aspects, and people feel the need to conform to this kind of social schmoozing, if you like. And I always, I will admit that I struggle to relate in many ways. I've never drunk, first and foremost, and particularly being from a position of maybe just a bit like, I just do what I want type thing. And I'm quite happy to say no. And I've done rugby initiations, and granted, I've done some very stupid stuff sober. There are some horrendous photos out there. But then I'm kind of like, so struggle to kind of relate in that sense. What would your kind of approach be in terms of managing this kind of more social and kind of finding that balance between how important work is versus working to and recognizing the damage that this kind of holding back on the goals?
I think there's two things to consider. One would be, again, lifestyle, values. What do you value most? Are you doing that job and putting so many hours in the office when actually work and finance isn't a huge driver for you? Maybe health and well-being is. I'm not saying quit your job. I'm saying ensure that your lifestyle reflects your values, because that will make you happier, because actually that is taking you to a place that you want to be. And the other thing would be around decision making one that sits well with your values and goals again. However, making peace with your decisions, the benefits and the costs of it, I think is really important. So that self-compassion again comes back, where it's being kind to yourself and having that conversation at the time of going, I'm going to make this decision here. What are the benefits of this? What are the consequences that I might face further down the line? right, if I'm making this decision, that means I've got to accept potential consequences further down the line, potential benefits as well. And being able to have those conversations of what would make me happier long term, what am I trying to achieve through this, again, what is my intent, and then using that to guide you throughout the day or throughout the whole process of, I know social is really important, especially in the corporate scene, of being part of the group, being part of the gang. But again, also being curious about what is that potential social occasion driving, what is it potentially masking as well. So I know a lot of people who were there and they'd go out on Thursday nights to get hammered just because they were going back on a Friday back home, and then they'd be lonely all weekend. And for them, that Thursday night was a sense of community. But actually making more meaningful connections outside of work might be a better thing for them as well. So having a larger social network, having multiple areas of life which you enjoy. So having potential coffee clubs that you go to on the weekend, having exercise and workout friends that you see at the gym who you really, really know. And that's what I like about a lot of the stuff at the moment, is communities are getting stronger. So you don't have to just be as part of one community. You can be part of multiple communities and enjoy them all. And that'll definitely help with your social and mental well-being. So first of all, values and goals, and seeing if your lifestyle leads that way, but then also values and goals or on your decision making as well. So looking at decisions and going, right, which decision out of all of these is going to align best with my values and goals? What are the potential consequences and benefits from this? And then making peace with that. So making peace at the time and not revisiting it again, not hating yourself for not choosing the decision, because you can't change it. So accept it and go, right, let's move on to the next thing. Because otherwise, if you keep replaying stuff that you should have, would have, could have done, then you're not going to move forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose that kind of particularly recognizing these things, if one of the first question that came in from Mo, approach food as a kind of an in and off season, would it be better that you may be eating a bit more food, that you may make over to kind of takeaways and stuff like that? I suppose one of the things that you can do is my mindset in and around that would be, first and foremost, we reiterate the kind of the notion of you have unconditional permission to eat whatever you want. So no matter what part of the season that you're in, quote, you do have some idea of, like I say, if you want a takeaway, you can have a takeaway. And that's the first thing to kind of acknowledge. But what you can do is look at your calendar over, like obviously the summer's coming up and say we're out of lockdown, and you might identify certain periods that are more social. And then that can be times where we can be less intentional in our dieting. And maybe, like I say, maybe there are some times where it does become a bit more appropriate to use. I use the term unsustainable strategies, but unsustainable strategies aren't necessarily miserable. They're just not representative of what real life looks like. And so for like, sometimes it can just be using like palate fatigue as an example of like playing upon that as a kind of a dieting strategy. And so maybe there is a time where that is a bit more appropriate. And so, yeah, certainly to kind of having this idea of periodizing your nutrition. And again, it's kind of this process of taking a step back. What does my calendar look like? And also, does it fit then the things that are important to me?
Yeah, I think one of the main things there is we as creatures, as hunter-gatherers, are designed to have a very varied diet throughout the year at times. If you think about food availability, when obviously we didn't have shops, things like that, our diet would vary throughout the whole year. And like Kara said, it's that unconditional permission to eat is really, really important to keep re-emphasizing. I'd say in regards to an on and off season, I think caloric surplus, unless it's social, is really, really null and void in a lot of senses in regards to performance and lifestyle and health. We know that if the whole old dirty bulk of like putting thousands of calories down your neck is really, really sort of not really necessary, when we can have like a slight surplus and just support all the training adaptation that we need through that and recovery. So having an on and off season and having that in your head is quite dichotomous. So that means yes or no. And instead of thinking it was an on and off switch, think of it as a dial, so you can tune it up and tune it down. So either be like, oh, I'm 90%, and then we can switch it down to 60% today. So I know that I've got base habits that I'm still getting in there. I'm still getting my 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. I'm still getting my 8 hours sleep, like 5 nights or 6 nights a week. I know I've got that leniency there. I know I'm getting my hydration in. But then some of them may be the cherries on top when we're potentially dieting, of extra physical activity or additional sessions or other things. We can just tune it up a little bit and go, right, instead of my meal looking like this, we can just make it it's slightly bigger, so it's 1.5 portions instead, a couple of nights a week. There don't have to be drastic changes for physiological changes. Most of your physiological changes will come from training, essentially, unless you want to drop body fat, which is mainly going to come from your physical activity output and your caloric intake. So there's not many variables we need to change, and there doesn't need to be a this end or this end. There needs to be, I like to use the phrase, the middle ground's never really sexy, but that's where most success happens. So instead of going, I'm team A or team B, I'm on it or I'm off it, because that's what happens. People are either, I'm dieting today or I'm not. I'm in a calorie deficit today. And as soon as they go, I've slightly went over my calories, it's, fuck it, they hit the fuck it button. And that's where they chuck everything in and they go, I'm going to have every single calorie in sight. Instead of just going, I know my maintenance is around 2,500 calories. When I'm really dieting, I can go down to 1,500. 1,700 is all right. Some days I might have it 2.5 again, so I'm at maintenance. I've had one day at 2,700. It's not the end of the world. Slightly at the other end, but that's, and just understanding that you're constantly on a sliding scale. It's never pass or fail. It's always pass or learning curve, that I like to say. Every day is a school day, and you don't have failures. You just got to learn from them instead. And every day we can learn is better. So the good phrase by Thomas Edison was, I never failed to make the light bulb. I just found 10,000 ways not to do it. Dieting is very much like that. You can try all these things and you just go, that doesn't really work for me. I'll just move forward in another way.
Yeah, I like that one. I have to say that there's so many sound bites from this this podcast that I'll peel out and send you away. No, that's amazing.
Awesome.
If there is anyone who if I work in banking and now convinced that nutrition is something, I pulled out a Gandhi quote on Monday as well.
Wrong. That's what we want.
It's the way it should go. But then one of the most pleasing things is that, like, the conversations that, like, say, the things that I feel as if we're talking about, but then I'm also aware that particularly we will attract a certain type of client, as it were. But it feels that, like, people's are just the result that people are willing to accept goes far more, like, they don't want to compromise their relationship with food anymore in a bid to get a result. And, like, the fact that this is on the rise, it definitely feels as if it's on the rise, it's obviously fantastic. It's testament to all the work that obviously people like Amelia and your whole team, it's testament to the work that Martin's done and obviously just the tour. And then there were obviously other people, James Smith and stuff, that have kind of brought very simple principles to the forefront. And it's so refreshing to kind of see that people are kind of just not accepting, just compromising other areas of their lives. And was this today? You put 95%, don't compromise 95% for the 5%?
Yeah, so don't miss out on 95% of your life to 5% weight loss. And I got a little bit of backlash from some German guy who went after me. And I was like, yeah, he was like, this doesn't work out. If somebody is giving up 95% of their life, that's not physiologically impossible. And it's just like, you work 70. I was like, you've missed it, mate. Like, the numbers don't mean anything. But he was, I think because he's German as well, it's probably a language thing. But people are very obsessed with, well, I just want to, like, James Smith has done some wonders for the industry, and I've got a lot of mutual friends with him, and I think he's done loads of things for fantastic people, for lots of people, and his ideas are coming from a good place, but they can be misinterpreted quite a lot, I feel. And people are trying to copy him as well and just reiterate CFD all the time, and I think there's more to him than that, and I think he's a very intelligent person in general with regards to marketing as well. I've got a lot of mutual friends with him, and like there's like he's actually like he's a really nice bloke, and everyone who's met him has said to me like that he's a lovely bloke. And I do feel that being body acceptance is on the rise with people, and I think that's becoming a massive, instead of trying to find happiness through hammering your body into a certain weight or a certain shape, I think people are actually just doing things that they enjoy in the body that they have and seeing where that takes them, and realizing that. And I think we're really good at calling out shaming now, so people are saying stuff that isn't appropriate. I think we're very good to say that's not okay to say that. I think rugby contexts are a bit different in what you can say and what you can't say. Yeah. And I think that's going to take a long time to come through, because there's a lot of bad practice in there in regards to like mental toughness and manning up. And I was part of the Chub Club when I was at Worcester, so we were the front row, we sent on the spin bikes for an hour to do aerobic conditioning to reduce body fat, which like just didn't make sense. We were training 3 times a day anyway. Like, yeah, it's not gonna, if that's not going to drop your body fat, an hour on the spin bike is not going to help, mate. But that was just the way that, like, it's that, well, this is what we've always done, so we're going to keep doing it, rather than people keep going back to Slimming World, keep going back to Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
Instead of, I had a question at the weekend, and somebody said, how do I step away from Slimming World? And I said, it's difficult, because it's part of your identity at the moment, that you feel that you are on a Slimming World girl or on a Slimming World lad. But you can always go back. You can always go back to Slimming World. You can always go back to Weight Watchers. But I think let's try this new way that I think is better for you. And I say that to a lot of my clients, is that if they're like, I don't want to up my calories, I was like, we can always bring them back down. We can always go back. Like, there's nothing to lose by trying something new. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. Right, just to finish, I'll just say I'm just gonna ask you 4 questions just personally, very quickly, and then if anyone else wants to add any questions to the end, then please do. So some of the guests that I have had on, I've just asked some very generic questions, just in the sense of the context of isolation and lockdown living. So if there was one meal that you had to eat for the rest of the lockdown, what would that be?
That's difficult. I've got some really, and again, this is coming back to like, food should nourish the soul, really important. So growing up, my nan always used to make a really nice stew, like a beef stew. So that would probably be that, because it's just comforting. And that's not me saying comfort eating is bad or good. Like, food should be comforting. So probably that with some bread.
Nice. The is there anything that you can recommend for the listeners to watch on either Netflix, Disney Plus? What have you watched? Anything interested in?
Well, I think the obvious call would be Tiger King, because that's just like what is going on there. I know. I've seen one today, and it's not as like dramatic as Tiger King, but it's about a pharmacist or a chemist.
Right.
Have you seen that one?
Nope.
I can't remember what it's called. It's about this massive scandal in Massachusetts, and around people getting convicted, and the chemists weren't actually checking anything. But then nobody's checking on the chemists. Then the people who were meant to be checking on people who were checking on the chemists weren't doing their job, and it just like went to crap. So that's really good. And what was the other option? The Netflix
or like, it was just any streaming service, really. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've been straight on the Disney Plus hype.
I haven't got.
How to Fix a Drug. How to Fix a Drug. That's what the program's called.
How to Fix a Drug. Yeah, it's worth a watch. And then on YouTube, what do I always watch on there? I don't know. I quite like my rugby stuff on there. So House of Rugby's pretty good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, like they've put on so many good ones recently as well. And then that's probably it. But then my old favourites would be like, I'm a big fan of the US Office. So if anybody can get stuck into that is probably the best program I've ever watched all the way through.
I have found myself, I've watched so many John Krasinski interviews in the past 2 weeks. It's unfathomed. And him and Emily Blunt are just like I want relationship like theirs.
And like John Krasinski is like goals, because he's just he's just a lovely human, and he's like really funny, and you're just like, I want to be like John Krasinski.
Yeah, no, same. And then what is have you got either a favorite means of self-care yourself, or have you got anything interesting that you're doing that you find quite therapeutic for yourself at the moment?
I do. See, I'm not a massive meditator. I can't sit still, really. I find that quite tough. So I do a lot of mindful moving. So if I watch, there's one, I use an app called Buddhify, but there's obviously lots of meditation apps available. And they have a walking one that I might do. I think it's about 8 minutes long. And it'll just be like, as you're walking, feel your toes gripping the ground. Feeling your breath. And it's just like, I just find that really, really nice. And that helps me. But also just doing stuff like this, talking to people. This is the sort of stuff I think we need right now. It's a lot more social engagements. I keep saying it's social distancing, but it's not. It's physical distancing. That's what we need to remember, that we can still be sociable. So let's all be sociable.
Yeah, amazing. And then finally, where can people find you? Where can they reach you, and where can they read more of your stuff?
So on Instagram is probably where I'm most active, and that is louisp.nutrition. So LOUISP.nutrition. Or if you go on Facebook, it's Padian, so it would be LOUISPADIAN. Or if you go to www.amelia.fitness, that is Amelia Thompson, and you can find a bit more about me on there. But Instagram's probably the best place. I tend to just post memes and interesting content, stories. Tomorrow's Friday, which means that I post my Friday story first thing. So everyone follow me, because Friday mornings are big on my stories.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you. Genuinely, really, really grateful for your time today.
No worries.
It's been really refreshing, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed just kind of listening and hearing you speak, and obviously just generally catching up anyway.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And obviously, I'm a big fan of what you do, Callum. It's like you're doing some amazing things, and it's just really good to catch up as well.
Yeah, likewise. So those that are tuning in, the next one will be available to view on YouTube probably next Wednesday, and then for those that are tuning in next Monday, we've got a guest that we're going to tell the story of. So it's a bit more of a sports chat on Monday. So looking forward to that.